This is an interview with Eric from Schlappi Engineering, the creator of the wonderful FPGA-driven and made 3-body, and his talk will be coming out on the Crowd Supply channel about this, and I will link that in the description when it does, because it was fascinating. But we talk a little about 3-body in this interview, and also Nibbler and Bitfolder, which are two complementary modules that follow very much in a similar spirit to his FPGA-driven module, but these ones just use CMOS chips. He kind of jumped in the other direction. The reason I'm giving a little preamble to this interview is, unfortunately, the way I wanted to do the interview did not quite pan out. We had audio from Eric on the microphone, as you will hear that I'm interviewing him. We also had audio running into my audio recorder as he showed how all of these things worked, and unfortunately that audio was corrupted to the point of it being unusable. However, luckily I did record a completely separate demo of Eric playing with 3-body and Nibbler and Bitfolder and the other few modules he had there, which I will put at the end of this video. So the way that you watch this video is kind of up to you. There will be timestamps in the description. You can jump to hear the synthesizer first and then listen to the interview, or if you're more just interested in hearing Eric talk, you could just watch the interview and then let that play afterwards. But I wanted to give a little preamble to this one because it may seem a little confusing as we're referring to things that unfortunately have been lost to the mists of digital corruption. Anyway, on with the interview. So I am aware that there is a crossover in our audience between people who are interested in developing on hardware and people who are into synthesizers. And so many of you will already be aware of the name 3-body. When the Eurorack module was released some time ago, it made waves for doing really awesome things with FM and phase. And what is possibly less important to the folks who are purely in it for the sound is the approach taken to create this module, which was a wonderful process with a very kind of bare metal approach to FPGA, I think is fair to say, right? But we're not going to spend too much time talking about that here, simply because Eric gave a wonderful talk here at Teardown in Portland yesterday, which will be on the Crowd Supply page, and we will be linking to that under this video with all of the details about 3-body and everything else that we talk about today. But we also have this set up so that we can record the output of what is happening here so you can hear in real time what we are talking about. So firstly, Eric, thank you so much for chatting to me, and congratulations on the success of 3-body. I think everyone has been overwhelmingly positive about it, which is must be a wonderful thing. So, I mean, before we do kind of move on from 3-body, obviously you went a lot into the deep dive design principles in the Crowd Supply talk. One of the things I did want to ask you about is one of the things that makes this really quite interesting for something which is such a fiercely digital thing is that it really does feel like an analog module. Was this something that was in your mind from the get-go? Was that something you wanted to do?
Yes. So a number of the ideas behind the 3-body I actually tried out in the analog realm or in kind of hybrid realms before getting to the 3-body, because I was really interested in phase modulation and ratios for ratio-based FM, but also ratios as a way of thinking about pitch and scale. That's a little bit different than our usual methods. I think there's a number of books and talks on the internet about how simple integer ratios make up our musical scales, and also make up rhythms. You can use the 3-body both at below audio rate and at audio rate, and you can use it for both pitch and rhythm. But yeah, so these precise ratios and also nice phase modulation is something that's pretty difficult to do in the analog realm. But I still wanted an analog style interface, which means knob and switch per function, and lots of inputs and outputs, which you don't usually see in the digital world because each output requires a digital to analog converter.
Absolutely, yeah.
Where in the analog world, usually each output is just attaching to a different part of the circuit that's already there.
And again, at this point, I will mention, if you're interested in finding out how you can, I wouldn't say skip, but essentially take away the idea of having to have multiple digital to analog converters and how you work with them, please do watch Eric's talk, because there was a lot of really interesting ways about how you can use the DAC on the FPGA to do that. But again, I thought a fine focus for today would be the idea that went into three-body influenced you to kind of come up with a few follow-up ideas, some of which are, if I'm right in saying, not necessarily released, but sort of in the stages of getting close because they're here, right?
So the Nibbler is released.
Oh, it is? Oh, excellent. Okay.
Yes, that was released in January. And that was, it's a 4-bit accumulator, which is, in more musical terms, you could think of it as a counter or a timer, but you can use it to subdivide a clock or a musical frequency. We can kind of hear some of this stuff.
Sure,
We've got the 3-body droning away with one of the oscillators set up as a low frequency oscillator and another one doing musical ratios. We have the Nibbler clocked by an envelope. Sending CV to our ratio oscillator. And then we're modulating between the two oscillators to create something
wonderful.
But so the Nibbler is like a sort of in a way it's a digital oscillator that can just count to 15. And you can choose how it counts. Each control is in binary. So right now we're just listening to triangle waves. And we're counting by 1. If we counted by 3, it actually starts to overflow in an interesting way. Or 7, or 5.
So cool.
And we can, since we have 2 different stepped voltage outputs, we can change their phase relationship so that they're actually, the 2 outputs are out of phase with each other. And then if we cross-modulated these oscillators, we get something that becomes very harmonically rich.
Absolutely, There's a huge amount of movement for seemingly quite little input,
And a lot of these ideas about just manipulating 4 bits came from being deep in the FPGA development process. We also have the bitfold, which is not quite out yet, which let's pull it's in 4-bit analog to digital converter, so you can see it counting counting in binary. But this can actually, we can use it to generate rhythms this way. Or we could take an input, an audio input, and use it to, let's take, it actually acts as a form of wave folding.
I know. I was about to say that. I was literally just about to say this sounds like a wave folder. So
so
that's blowing my mind.
Binary has a very. Right now, we're listening to the least significant bit of the binary converter, which has a similar relationship to the input wave as a wave folder would, because it folds back down each time.
Exactly,
Except in this case, the waveform is a square, so it's a bit a bit harsher maybe than.
But I mean, but that's also wild because one of the limitations of wavefold. Oh no, I'm getting backwards on it. No, yeah, one of the limitations of wavefold is that you have to have at least some curve on the signal in order for it to fold, right?
Because you still would in this case. Yeah. You need your input signal needs to be to have some sort of a slope.
Okay. All right. So yeah, for a second there, I thought you'd broken the rules of physics.
No. But it is interesting because providing different input waveforms will provide very different outputs. Like the sine wave, folding the sine wave is actually really interesting.
Yeah.
Because the output, if you looked on an oscilloscope, actually ends up being this weird mix of sinusoids and sawtooth waves.
It just has an incredible amount of richness to the sound as well. Oh my.
Well, and it can get a little extreme because so 4 bits actually gives you 16 octaves up.
Okay, right, yeah.
So you get this like
oh wow.
And you also have these other outputs like just the 4-bit reconstructed wave, which is a weird one because it's still mostly a sine wave, but these harsh little overtones from the fact that it's a step to 4 bits. And you have the triangle folder, then the other bits, which will all be at lower octaves.
Yeah.
So you could mix them together to get different octaves of the same folding type.
That's absolutely wonderful. And one of the things you did touch on in your talk yesterday is that obviously you dove very deep into FPGA land in order to get the 3-body out. Is the underlying tech between these ones a departure from that? Or are you still working quite heavily in that field? Because I know you were talking about maybe also doing some purely analog stuff again just to get away. But
so these are just CMOS chips.
Right,
You could have made these modules in the mid-'80s, maybe. The mindset's a little bit different, but the technology's old. Yeah. I think one of the things that's really cool about working with FPGAs is like it gets rid of most of the black boxes. Like there's always a black box somewhere.
Yeah, for sure.
But when you get down and you're looking at individual bits and thinking about fundamental structures like accumulators and muxes, and logic operations, it's powerful and it's really interesting to think about, and it has a lot of correspondences to fundamental concepts in the analog realm as well. And so I kind of took a lot of things I was thinking about in this more hi-fi way and thought that maybe you can use the cruder form for a musical effect.
Yeah, for sure. You played yourself. And one question which it's in a way kind of slightly removed from all this, but I guess it is relevant given where we are. There have been a handful of Eurorack modules that have launched on Crowd Supply, but for the most part, it's not a place where you tend to see that many of them. But I mean, could you give maybe for other folks out there who are thinking of kind of trying to put together their own modules and things?
So these have not launched on Crowd Supply.
Oh, they haven't? I'm sorry. Okay, I got that wrong.
I produced this in more of a traditional...
I apologize, I got that wrong. Okay.
But so our connection to Crowd Supply here is that I use their dev boards to prototype.
I understand. Sorry, yeah, I got slightly mixed up because I know there has been at least 1 or 2 modules, and I assumed that 3-body was one of them. Okay, so it was more a case of Crowd Supply were able to support the development of it.
Yep.
I see. Okay, cool.
Yeah, I've taken the very traditional manufacturing route of spending all the money in my bank account to do a run, and then hoping that people buy the thing, so that the money comes back to me.
But it certainly seems from all angles that risk did pay off. I know that the first run of the 3-body sold out quite quickly. Is there? I know that you were talking about another run. Is there another run that is available?
The second run we're still selling through.
Excellent. Okay. Cool.
And because I was freaked out during the parts crisis, I bought lots of parts so we can make more runs when this one sells out as well.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, and I mean, there's been a lot of excitement about three-body. I imagine there's going to be a lot of people that will vibe very heavily with the ideas behind both the Nibbler, and I've already forgotten the name of the new one. What's the?
So this one's Bitfold.
Bitfold. Okay.
There's also another one that's coming out before this that I misplaced the prototype this morning, but the Bitmix should actually be coming out this month, which is It's meant to live with the Bitfold and the Nibbler, and it does logic operations on nibbles, on 4-bit 4-bit signals, which is nice because you can do things like use nibblers or bitfolds to generate gates, and then you can switch them on and off or combine them in the bitmix and create your weird logic drum machine, or at audio rate, this corresponds to phase modulation.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
I really wish I could have found one of those this morning, but...
Yeah, well, I mean, by the time this goes out, if you do have any demoing of that online and you send it to us, I'll make sure that's linked as well. And I mean, with three-body and the Nibbler and the Bitfold, with all of the things that you are making and selling, if people want to find them, to find out more about them, to maybe get one for themselves, how's the best way they can find you online?
So Schlappi Engineering is our website. We have a YouTube channel where a friend of ours, Stasma, has been doing twice monthly videos, and then our modules are sold through most major synthesizer retailers. I've always think about doing DIY things, but most of our stuff is it's pretty complicated back there. I'm impressed with people that figure out something way to simplify something enough that people would want to build it in a non-tortuous way.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Well, but as I said at the very start of this interview, it must be a very gratifying thing to have something that has been so very well received, because the other sphere of my existence, and before I did any of this, was music. And you know that people could be quite picky. So, but once again, I just want to say thank you so much for giving me a bit of time today. And once again, for the folks watching this at home, I highly recommend checking out the video of Eric's talk he gave, which was a real deep dive into how three-body came together, the development process, how to deal with a parts crisis without getting horrifically depressed, and all of those things. And once again, I'll leave a link to the Schlappi Engineering site in the description as well, if you want to find any of these modules and buy them for yourself. Eric, I'm so glad that you made it down here and I could see this in person. Thanks for chatting to me.
Thank you so much.
Pretty much, I just have a strap of in. You'd be able to try it yourself. It's not particularly good.
You brought on the space chicken.